Greetings to the Lord's chosen. The world does not applaud when a chosen one moves. There are glitches. That's precisely what's taking place at the moment. No one can describe you. You are unpredictable, and to be honest, half of the people who are watching you are still attempting to determine whether you simply broke their reality's algorithm or just manifested something. Because let's face it, you didn't just do something out of the ordinary. You did something that cannot be explained. What exactly did this person tap into is the kind of change that causes people to mumble, lower their voice, and mentally relive the occurrences. Here's a statistic to help ground this crazy. According to studies, people's imaginations fill in the blanks when they are unable to rationally comprehend someone's actions. Furthermore, reality is seldom as spectacular as fiction. They are speaking for that reason. They're analyzing because of this. Your name is popular in circles you have never been in because of this. However, the truth is more complex than rumors. You just did something that wasn't an action. There was a ripple, the kind of wave that agitates the sedentary, rouses the slumbering, perplexes the arrogant, and reveals the phonies. Everyone is behaving as though they have just experienced a spiritual plot twist with just one choice, one change, and one elevation. You made no announcements. No miracles were worked by you. You didn't yell, "Look at me," while standing on a table. You just lived in alignment, that's all. And for some reason that was sufficient to paralyze them with philosophical thoughts. A few are motivated. Some people feel intimidated while feigning indifference. Some people are visiting your page more frequently than you do. And since they're still getting over the last upgrade, some people are secretly hoping you don't level up again. Hold on tight, because we're going to explain why everyone is whispering, why no one can understand you, and why the atmosphere looks perplexed whenever you walk in. Indeed, there will be truthfulness, nuance, and revelation, along with perhaps a dash of humor to keep you from fainting from the intensity. Let's begin. First of all, you changed the mood without saying a word. People's reactions when you first entered the room were different for a purpose, and it had nothing to do with your attire or volume. Before you even spoke, the room was reconfigured by something about you. Although you didn't ask for attention, it eventually found you. Suddenly, those who were laughing too loudly lowered their volume. Those who were boasting saw a decline in confidence. Even those who don't get upset became oddly vigilant, as though an unseen spotlight had been turned on. This type of effect is not ostentatious and cannot be produced. People who aren't accustomed to confronting themselves find it unsettling when someone with clarity, purpose, and a degree of inner harmony makes a change. There was a mirror in your presence, and anyone hiding behind pride, performance, or personality finds mirrors unsettling. You didn't purposefully reveal them. You just existed, and the pressure of authenticity was too much for their facade to withstand, because they perceived solidity in you, something serene, rooted, and almost calming. Some people were drawn to you because your energy brought to light all they had been avoiding. Others were agitated or anxious. They had no idea why, but all of a sudden their normal confidence felt stolen, their jokes felt forced, and their words felt too heavy. They weren't answering your questions. The truth you hold caused them to react. It's also the reason why, despite your denials that you did anything noteworthy, people still remember your entry. It was simply another moment to you. It was a change in the air to them. The sort that awakens their instincts and forces them to take notice. They have no idea if you are a challenge to the environment, a threat, or a blessing. They simply sense that something new entered. You came not to dominate or to impress. You just showed there as yourself, and for some reason that was enough to change the atmosphere in the whole room. People can sense that force, but they are unable to explain it, the power that operates silently, the presence that makes an impression without permission. They are speaking for that reason. They had a genuine feeling, and authenticity always makes an impression. Second, you caused changes that individuals didn't request. Although you didn't intend to alter anyone, there's something about your existence that compels individuals to face aspects of themselves they've been ignoring for years. It's not because you strive to correct them or preach right. You just present yourself as someone who is open to developing, and that reveals just how much they have been motionless. Individuals who have been at ease with their routines suddenly experience discomfort. Your development brought their stagnation to light, not because you criticize them. Before someone like you enters their area, some people are unaware of how much they've settled. They begin to see the relationships that exhaust them, the justifications that keep coming up in their heads, and the routines they have outgrown. They weren't told to change by you. Change seemed necessary because of you. Standing next, you revealed to them all they had been avoiding, as if you were carrying an unsaid standard. Some people find this realization to be motivating. You arouse their ambition, bring back long-forgotten aspirations, and inspire them to aim higher. All of a sudden, individuals are making choices that they ought to have made years ago, leveling up, speaking up, taking chances, and establishing limits. They may not acknowledge you, but they are aware of your impact. Encourage them to wake up. Others find your influence unsettling. Because you upended the self-image they were working so hard to preserve, they feel vulnerable, agitated, or defensive. Even though you didn't fight them, their justifications became less compelling as you grew. Their fears were amplified by your assurance. Their perplexity was more difficult to conceal because of your lucidity. And other people react by withdrawing, gossiping behind your back, or acting as though you did something wrong rather than acknowledging that you inspired them. However, the reality still stands. Without attempting, you altered their viewpoint. You created mental openings for them that they weren't yet prepared to enter. You exposed aspects of them that they weren't ready to confront. They also know you were the catalyst, even if they never express it. You lived in a way that made change inevitable for everyone around you, not because you said anything. Thirdly, you upset their order without confronting anyone. You didn't demand attention, compete, or confront. But when you got there, everything changed. Those who were silently following you felt an unexplainable draw toward you, while those who believed they were untouchable felt instantly exposed. The carefully built dynamics surrounding you were upset just by your presence. Leaders doubted their power without understanding why. Influencers noticed a decline in their power. The temptation to go up or away suddenly overcame many who were happy to remain in the background. The balance of power they depended on ceased to operate as it always had, but you didn't put anyone down. The odd thing is that you had no intention of doing so. You weren't attempting to establish your position or prove anything. You just let your intuition lead your relationships, lived in harmony with yourself, and took action based on your clarity. And that was sufficient to upend the fabricated order on which people relied. The top ones sensed a subtle danger they were unable to describe. Those at the bottom had unexpected hope. Because your energy lived outside of the conventional conventions of hierarchy, no one understood whether to fear, adore, or imitate you. Changes were subtle enough for people to notice. When you walked in, conversation stopped. Without any voice, decisions were re-examined. The surroundings themselves appeared to shift in response to your presence. You did not, however, assert authority, issue commands, or call for allegiance. The ripple effect caused everyone around you to react, change, and reevaluate their own perspectives because you simply existed as someone who functions on a different frequency. They are unable to explain you because of this. One act does not reveal the disruption. It's the result of your alignment, your self-assurance, and your reluctance to follow their unspoken norms. No one was dethroned by you. No conflict was started by you. You didn't even make an announcement. Simply by shifting the equilibrium and exposing the flaws, you caused the room to rebalance around the energy you contributed. And more than anything else, that simultaneously fascinates and terrifies people. Fourth, you added a degree of genuineness. They couldn't keep their masks on. In a world full of performances, there's something disarming about someone who comes up as themselves. And you did precisely that. You entered places without a plan, without a script, and without any desire to make an impression. It was enough to make those who depend on personalities feel oddly vulnerable. They are accustomed to using restrained facial expressions, cultivated self-assurance, and consistent conduct to win people over. However, everything around you begins to break down. They are not charming, their intimidation is ineffective, their typical tactics fail to elicit the desired response. Your genuineness seems to disrupt the signal that their identities rely on. They were not called out by you. The person they pose as was not attacked by you. However, your presence served as a silent reminder of their true selves, and that's uncomfortable for certain individuals. It compels them to face the discrepancy between their reality and their image. Those with bravado suddenly feel insignificant. People begin to stumble over their jokes when they employ comedy as a deflective tactic. Strangely transparent, even those who take delight in their mystery. They feel that you see past their facade, and that in itself causes their practiced self to falter a bit. The fact that you're not attempting to expose anyone adds even more intrigue to this. You're not here to make people feel inferior or ashamed of themselves. You are simply being truthful in a manner that is rarely rewarded by society. You talk clearly. You truly listen. You express your feelings without saying sorry. You establish limits without being tough. And for those who have spent years putting themselves in characters, this simplicity feels like a spotlight. In response, some individuals become more genuine around you. Since honesty feels comfortable in your presence, they loosen up, let their guard down, and stop the act. Others feel intimidated because vulnerability is necessary for authenticity, and they have spent their entire lives avoiding vulnerability. As a result, people behave awkwardly, defensively, or irritably without knowing why. However, the reality is straightforward. When there is someone who isn't acting, artificial things don't last. You did not remove their mask. When confronted with someone who doesn't require a mask, their mask just couldn't maintain its shape. That's why they bring you up. They can't forget you because of this. Although your genuineness isn't overt, it has enough strength to expose the fake. Fifth, you gave them a sense of visibility they were unaware was attainable. You've always worked on a deeper level, and there's a difference between seeing someone and just looking at them. You don't look at people superficially. You can sense the change in their energy, the reality underlying their actions, and the tone behind their words. You don't pry when something doesn't match. You don't ask questions. However, your consciousness penetrates layers that most people aren't accustomed to being observed beneath. And it feels like exposing to people who take pride in their inability to be read. People become accustomed to concealing in plain sight, which makes it unnerving. They are accustomed to projecting the image of themselves that they believe to be the most secure, self-assured, tough, unconcerned, and enigmatic. However, that version begins to seem transparent around you. Rather than reacting to the performance, you react to the intention. Beneath the silence, you can sense the emotion. You can see the hesitancy in something they said was acceptable. It is not an intentional action. You simply are who you are. People sense the deeper frequency at which your perception operates. Since it's uncommon to meet someone who views you without bias or agenda, some individuals value this. They become more at ease with you than they do with other people. They open up for no apparent reason. They put their trust in you to tell them things they didn't intend to. It feels good to be noticed by you. It's like letting go of a burden they were unaware they had. However, for some, particularly those who have constructed an identity around being unreadable or untouchable, being seen feels like a threat. They're not accustomed to having their years of armor inspected for flaws. They refer to it as mystery, strong presence, or strange energy. Because you would have to acknowledge a vulnerability they aren't prepared to face. If you admitted that you saw the part they hide, you're not attempting to decode anyone, which is ironic. You're just paying attention. Your instincts don't wait for approval. You don't have to explain your empathy when all you're doing is listening with more than just your ears. People feel like you're analyzing them. That's why they continue to talk about you after you've left. It is uncommon to be observed. It is less common to be understood without speaking. However, being so obviously seen that someone's mask falls off effortlessly, that's what people remember, and that's the impact you have. Sixth, you refuse to accept what others would plead for. People were really perplexed by your actions at this point because they didn't make sense in their universe. You left things that most people would fight for with all of their might. Possibilities, relationships, attention, approbation, invitations, and settings that appear positive on the outside, but feel terrible to your soul. The fact that you left wasn't the only thing that shocked them. It was the ease with which you accomplished it. No drama, no lengthy justification, no pleading for comprehension. You just made your own decision. And those who depend on outside approval to feel whole were shaken by that choice. They were unable to comprehend someone who doesn't settle, cling, or compromise their uniqueness in order to fit in. It became clear to them how much they rely on those things for security when they witnessed you releasing the things they would have fought for. Titles that flatter the insecure didn't impress you. Relationships that deplete your peace did not tempt you. You didn't fall for opportunities that ran counter to your development. You left because you place a higher emphasis on purpose than on popularity and alignment over appearances. Before they noticed your radiance after you left, they thought you must have lost something. It wasn't until your ascension that they realized you weren't being dramatic. They thought you would come back because you were lonely or afraid, but you never did. They were uneasy because of that. You didn't simply walk out of a situation. They're still stuck in the mindset you left them in. People respected you, even though they didn't want to, since you wouldn't be bought or borrowed. Because it is more difficult to walk away from something that is bad than to hang on to it. It calls for self-worth, discipline, and clarity. The majority of folks are still looking. Your ability to let go made their own concessions seem burdensome. Your choices brought to light the instances in which they have prioritized comfort over development. And because they're still trying to figure out how you had the guts to abandon what they would have pursued, people still talk about it now. They are unaware that you did not abandon something, you moved in your own direction. And people always notice that kind of move, whether or not they acknowledge it. Seventh, you broke not a personal but a generational tendency. What you did rocked the basis of everything that came before you, not simply your life. Even if they are unable to define it, people can still feel it. You bear a certain weight, not because you're burdened, but because you're the one who finally said, "This stops with me." You broke the patterns, habits, and attitudes that your family normalized, and they passed down without question because they didn't know any other. You didn't simply choose differently. A trend that had been successful for decades was broken by you. People are perplexed by your growth because of this. They can see that your breakthrough isn't your typical lucky moment or glow-up. It feels more profound than just your tale. It's a sort of spiritual rebellion. You entered an area that previous generations had never explored. They neglected the wounds you repaired. You questioned the beliefs they adhered to. They accepted constraints, but you refused. Personal change is not that. Ancestral work, that is. Because of the clear shift people talk about you. You move differently, think differently, and make different decisions. It is evident in the way you reject turmoil, the limits you establish, the tranquility you preserve, and the future you are creating. They witness an individual who broke out from a mold that all others remained stuck in. They also know in their hearts that it wasn't an accident. Having to deal with issues you didn't cause requires a specific kind of fortitude. Healing hurt that you did not cause requires bravery, and leaving dysfunction requires a certain type of insight. People whisper about your success because it doesn't feel normal, even when it's familiar. It seems historic. Something seems to have changed in the entire family, not just in your life. Your mentality couldn't withstand the previous patterns. Your spirit was too strong for the old patterns to control, and your decisions couldn't be dictated by your previous anxieties. It wasn't only a pattern you broke. Under the veil of tradition, you violated a curse. You set yourself free, and you liberated those who follow you by doing that. Your rise feels like a phenomenon because of this. What you're doing is beyond the imagination of generations before you, and the ripple is felt by all. You made the impossible seem like a Tuesday. Number 8, people are still trying to figure out how you managed to accomplish something that has been causing them anguish for months, years, or even their entire lives. They believe you possess a secret power that they were not born with because of the cool way you handled it. In actuality, you made no announcements, boasted, or hurried. You didn't make it a performance, you just did what had to be done. And it shook them for precisely that reason. Progress is typically viewed as a spectacular event. You handle it as though it were routine upkeep. Their limiting ideas, procrastination, and concerns frequently combine to create what they identify as impossible. However, you don't tackle problems that way. You move with an inner confidence that makes challenging situations seem doable. You don't overthink your actions or exaggerate your objectives. While others are still gathering the guts to consider, you have enough faith in yourself to take action. Your acts appear larger than they actually were because of that confidence. Not that the work was simple. It's because you're in harmony with your identity. Therefore, effort doesn't tire you the way it does someone who is forcing or faking. You follow your intuition without question. You go with them. What appears to be otherworldly to others becomes your typical pace when you follow your own self. People anticipated that you would falter, struggle, or panic. Rather, you remained silent, calm, and attentive. You didn't record the procedure or look for praise. You simply dealt with it and went on. Anyone who depends on commotion to demonstrate their advancement is perplexed by that kind of silent execution. They can't understand that clarity and consistency can lead to success without turmoil, so they believe something magical happened. Your achievement demonstrated the distinction between anxiety-driven and purpose-driven work. You didn't fear them, but they believed you magically skipped steps. They believed you were fortunate, but you were ready. They believed you had assistance, but you were disciplined, and you've already moved on to the next item while they're still digesting the result. Because it's not a wonder to you to do the impossible. It has a beat. When you stop apologizing for your potential and just embrace it, it's your natural state. They are unable to explain you because of this. You made it appear to be just another Tuesday by mastering the things they complicate, but you woke up number 9. They didn't realize they had parts of humans. You have a way of bringing things that have been buried to the surface. Things that people believed they failed at, outgrew, or outlived. You don't use pressure or speeches to inspire others. Just being around you serves as a reminder of all they used to aspire to. Their long-suppressed goals are suddenly attainable once more. Their lost confidence begins to reappear. The person they left behind starts to knock on the door. And it all occurs just by virtue of their presence. Stasis is broken by the energy you carry. Those who settle begin to wonder why they gave up. Individuals who shrink themselves begin to appreciate the space they are entitled to. Quietly giving up on life causes some to rediscover a spark they haven't experienced in years. They notice this happening, but you don't. Internally, they sense the change. Sometimes it frightens them so much. Being in your presence seems to awaken something they had forgotten was still alive. Some people experience that activation as inspiration. Without any encouragement, they begin to level up. They take up tasks, mend past hurts, and pursue objectives they previously classified too late. They realize they wanted more for themselves as well. After witnessing your rise, you become a living example of the possibility of transformation. Others, however, find this waking to be annoying because it feels dangerous to be around someone who reminds them of their untapped potential. Not because you did anything wrong. It draws attention to how long they have been asleep. It reveals the extent to which they have let fear or sloth rule their decisions. They feel defensive rather than appreciative of the spark. To avoid admitting that you woke up a part of them they weren't prepared to face, they begin to compare, compete, and even become resentful of you. In any case, no one goes unaltered. People aren't allowed to remain numb. You don't allow them to remain at ease in denial. You give them a renewed feeling of purpose, ambition, fearlessness, and inventiveness. The change is felt even by those who act indifferent. The part of you that knows they are capable of more is awakened by your presence, and the truth is the same whether they accept it or reject it. They believed that something they had lost forever had been reactivated by you. Number 10, you revealed the boundaries of jealousy. You are the one who identified the precise boundary at which envy ceases to affect people. Everyone tried everything, imitating your tone, adopting your habits, copying your manner, and even analyzing your actions as if they were a blueprint. However, they were unable to copy the material, regardless of how precisely they were able to replicate the surface. They were unable to equal the energy behind the actions, but they could match the actions. That's when the reality struck. Your actions were never what made you valuable. It was in your character. The idea that someone's success is based on a formula that anybody may copy feeds envy. However, you dispelled that delusion. It is impossible to replicate authenticity, align, or counterfeit intent, as you demonstrated. Every time somebody attempted to outdo you, you simply moved into a different lane, frustrating those who believed they could outdo you. You weren't in a competition, you were changing, and because progress was not their motivation, they were unable to stay up. It was a comparison. It wasn't your accomplishment that annoyed me the most. It was how being who you were organically led to success. They attempted to make you do what came naturally to you. They attempted to produce what you carried with ease. And the disparity grew more pronounced the harder they tried. Your accomplishments weren't being pursued by them. They were trying to find your soul. Furthermore, essence is not for sale. Some turned into silent observers, surreptitiously researching you like a case they were unable to solve, because it is safer to criticize something they can't replicate than to concede loss. Others became into outspoken detractors. However, the same insight underpinned each of their responses. You cannot be comprehended by copying, strategy, or logic. You have experience. You've lived. You are not something they can take. You are something they must be. And for that reason, they converse. Their failure to figure you out hurts their ego, not because they figured you out. When envy encountered someone whose identity cannot be replicated, it revealed its own boundaries. You were clear. You are not a model. They are trying to find a soul print, which is impossible to duplicate. 11. You didn't guess. You moved as if you were being led. People observed your decision-making process and found it hard to comprehend how someone could walk with such confidence in a world when everyone else seems hesitant. You were on the move while they were gathering feedback, seeking approval from friends, or waiting for the right opportunity. Additionally, your decisions appeared audacious, dangerous, and even irresponsible from the outside. They were unaware, however, that you weren't relying on guesswork to get by. They have never known the inner clarity you were pursuing. You didn't move out of pressure or fear. You shifted out of alignment. Even when others didn't think your instincts made sense, you trusted them. You stated no without asking permission, and yes without requiring applause. Those who require the throng to feel protected were perplexed by that degree of serene conviction. They were unable to understand how you made significant life changes without second-guessing yourself, how you left the known without feeling guilty, or how you ventured into uncharted terrain without fear. You didn't have a loud or dramatic intuition. There was no performance. It was the subdued confidence that comes with having a thorough understanding of oneself, your limits, your potential, your purpose, your triggers, and your routines. You weren't responding to the world, you heard it. And when you paid attention, events came together in ways that others could only describe as fate or timing, because they were unable to acknowledge that intuition can become its own form of intelligence when it aligns. People made an effort to slow you down, warn you, or persuade you to choose the safer path. However, you relied on internal guidance, whereas others depended on external confirmation. They couldn't equal the results that came from that difference alone. You were always in sync, even if you weren't always correct. And for that reason, even when their path seemed to be at a standstill, yours continued to unfold. Some people were irritated by your movements since they showed their hesitation due to your confidence. They were reminded of the amount of time they had wasted waiting for unnecessary signs. However, it also served as an inspiration to others, those who interpreted your decisions as showing faith in something more profound rather than irresponsibility. You didn't guess. You moved as if you were being guided. People were able to sense that. They can't deny that alignment hits differently, even if they don't comprehend it. And the evidence is you. 12. You made it through times that ought to have split you in two. People thought you would crumble beneath the weight of the storms you endured. They measured the losses, counted the blows, and silently braced themselves to see you falter. You did more than just survive, though. You returned more resilient, sharper, and stronger than before. For you, resilience is a way of life, but to them it's just a word. Every failure served as a teaching moment. Every setback serves as a catalyst for development. They believed they understood adversity, strain, and difficulty, but by just getting back up when everyone thought you would fall, you changed everything. You weren't successful because of time or luck. It was your refusal to let events shape your narrative. You patiently examined, adjusted, and rebuilt while others wailed in annoyance or pleaded for sympathy. You did more than simply fix the problems. You made the foundation stronger. There were no spectacular gestures to show that you had recovered. It was in the deliberate manner in which you proceeded. You exuded a serene assurance and an intensity that shouted, "I'm still here and I'm unstoppable." The thing that most surprises people is how easily you manage the things that would shatter most. They believe that reaching your lowest point necessitates hardship and obvious pain, yet you have shown that strength can be smooth, silent, and incisive. Your climb in disbelief is being watched by the same eyes that counted your failures. They expected exhaustion, doubt, and hesitancy. However, you showed them something far scarier, self-control even in the face of turmoil. Because it highlights the difference between those who survive and those who thrive, your resilience is instructive. You bounce forward, while other people bounce back. You evolve rather than simply recuperate, and your tale becomes unforgettable because of that progression. They mention you because they see something uncommon, someone who not only survived what ought to have been their demise, but also came out stronger than before. You didn't simply make it through. You demonstrated that breaking points are only as definitive as you let them be by turning survival into a blueprint for power. 13. You didn't request respect. They were no longer able to treat you disrespectfully. You didn't ask for, barter for, or negotiate respect. Setting the bar for how others should treat you didn't require validation. Rather, you led a life that prevented disrespect without revealing the individual who attempted it. People automatically notice the invisible line you made with your presence, composure, clarity, and self-awareness, but they were unable to cross it without appearing silly. It had nothing to do with intimidation. It was about vigor, boundaries, and unwavering consistency. People quickly learn that it's not a good idea to play games with you. They cannot use charm, guilt, or lies to control you. They cannot compel you to comply, incite your wrath, or subdue you. When someone tries it, their own shortcomings and fears become apparent. While you stay calm, they become the spectacle. People that try to push your boundaries end up feeling ashamed because of this. They have no leverage because of you. All they do is reveal themselves. You have a subtle vibe. It's not noisy. The purpose of the performance is not to frighten anyone. It's strength in silence. It's the kind of presence that lets people know you value yourself and won't accept anything less than your best. People see it right away, and it alters their interactions with you. Even those who typically push boundaries, question authority, or control situations naturally understand that you are untouchable. You have a strong foundation, not because you are superior to others. People eventually realize it's not worth their time to try to treat you disrespectfully. They could test the waters, but your honesty and constancy always put an end to it. There was no reputation you built. Anyone who violates the standard you set just exposes their own shortcomings, not yours. Because you first mastered yourself, you became someone they couldn't treat disrespectfully. You exemplified honor rather than requesting it. And others are unable to ignore or undercut the impression that is left by that silent mastery. Not only are you respected, in ways that people don't even completely comprehend, you are untouchable. 14. You demonstrated that you can become the topic without a stage. You didn't publicize, shout, or make people pay attention to you. You didn't seek attention, influence, or likes. You didn't perform to get approval. Nevertheless, you managed to become the topic of conversation for everyone. People talk about you because it's difficult to ignore you because of your energy, presence, and actions, not because you sought attention. The fact that you automatically attract attention frightens and fascinates those around you. You work quietly, calmly, and purposefully while others scramble for attention. You develop, produce, and grow without the limelight. Furthermore, the outcomes are more powerful than any announcement ever could be. People are unable to explain you because of this. Since you're not performative, they can't minimize you to fads, accomplishments, or posts on social media. You can't be avoided. You don't need to inflate your influence. It leaves a mark that lasts long after you're gone, permeating every area you enter. Because they are attempting to decode something that shouldn't be decoded, people scrutinize every action you make. They don't understand that freedom, and you're not writing their story. To get attention, you didn't scale a stage. You were easily noticeable because of your alignment. You didn't look for praise. You were sought after. You failed to promote yourself. You became the standard. And that's what separates someone who becomes memorable from someone who becomes viral. Trends expire, interest changes, and viral content disappears. However, being inevitable is irreversible. It is independent of time, performance, or chance. Integrity, presence, and a refusal to compromise are necessary. People become fixated on you because they perceive your significance in a noisy world. They communicate because what they saw is too much for them to keep to themselves. They don't understand it, so they analyze. You failed to provide a spectacle. You established a norm, a silent power that is unavoidable. Because of this, you unintentionally became the subject, the standard, and the phenomena they couldn't stop talking about. All of what you have just read, seen, and experienced is evidence of a reality that most people will never completely understand. Being loud, ostentatious, or in need of approval is not what it means to be chosen. It's about leading a life that is so in line with your identity that people are forced to pay attention. You don't need to draw attention to yourself, declare your dominance, or show off your accomplishments. You just are. And everything around you changes because of that existence. Every space, every dialogue, and every energy you come into contact with recalibrates because the chosen have an indelible, inevitable, and unforgettable influence. You have the unique capacity to inspire people to grow, rekindle lost bravery, and subvert generational and personal structures without ever meaning to. You've survived storms that ought to have broken you, but instead you've come out stronger, more composed and sharper. You've shown the limitations of jealousy, the pointlessness of copying, and the brittleness of delusion. People talk about you because even if they don't understand it, they are affected by you. You've demonstrated that genuine strength doesn't require a stage, that sincerity shatters illusions, and that alignment has a power that no amount of convincing can match. Being understood is not a prerequisite for being chosen. It's all about feeling. The goal is to move in a way that demands respect without asking for it. Living with a clarity that awakens everyone around you and making seemingly impossible things seem straightforward. People who come into contact with you are left with unavoidable rippling effects. They are simultaneously challenged, awoken, motivated, and uneasy. The mirror they never requested is you, or the force they are unable to control, and the standard they are unable to meet. That's what being selected means. That's what it means to move in a way that everyone notices, but no one can explain. Be sure to join the movement if this spoke to you. To ensure that you never miss these facts, subscribe to the channel. To express your support, click the like button. Leave a comment with your ideas or personal stories, and forward this video to anyone in need of empowerment, awakening, and recognition. It's time to let the world know what it means to be genuinely aligned, genuine, and unstoppable. Be blessed.